from my perspective in this role, I would love to have people who build future learners who understand and recognize difference, but are able to acknowledge it, but move beyond it and see kind of how a diverse and inclusive world will be a much more interesting and exciting and better place.
When I thought about the question, sustaining places of belonging and care, I really thought about our role as leaders and how important it is to center equity and inclusion, of course. And I think that comes from a place of being able to address those systemic inequities that impact students. So, what we're thinking about is so that every child feels seen and heard and valued. And I think about how important student agency and student voice are part of those systems that we have to consider.
This, in my opinion, is really the base of all the work that we do in education. And when we think about system transformation and innovation, it really can't happen in a meaningful and effective and impactful way without those connective threads of humanity. As educational leaders, we have to do the work. You have to actually be in the work, living, breathing, feeling it, touching it. And you have to know the work. So that currency that I think that we are, we're really required to ensure that we're upholding our knowledge base as we are trusted to make the decisions that we do make many, many times throughout, be it the school day or the school year itself.
When we think about belonging and care for all students, there's also the facet of Indigenous knowledge. And how do we lift that up? And how do we embed Indigenous perspectives and practices? I think it's in those small steps in that day-to-day living where it's so important, and thinking about how do we ensure that cultural safety and authenticity for Indigenous students and families. And I already mentioned it around that piece around how us as leaders are modeling this work. We may not be day-to-day interacting with students, but how we walk in the world, how we model that work, leading with empathy and humility, and to inspire that cultural care throughout an entire district.
Creating, to me, it starts with self, the awareness of oneself as a person, which can stem from many different things, our identity, values, how we show up in spaces, especially in our work settings and such. So the intentionality of knowing ourselves, but also finding ways that you can, as a leader, create spaces where people feel safe, valued, heard, understood.
The question that I really am thinking deeply about and also grappling with in regards to, this current moment in time is, how do we foster a sense of belonging in this world? There's a fluidity to that question that I think we need to keep coming back to as educational leaders, and recognizing that our work is all about creating a sense of belonging for our students in this wild world that surrounds us, so that they are gifted with the skills and the knowledge and the fortitude to move forward in their future lives, recognizing and understanding how important it is to honor and care for the land and the environment that we are residing upon. I think this is fostered by, a really deep sense of stewardship and reciprocity, and that interconnectedness that we humans have with the natural world is one that, again, can't be taken for granted and can't be understated. Another part of this that I think is important for us to lean into and think more about is, we do have to recognize our own lived experiences and the fact that we're humans and we are all going to be impacted by what we've lived and experienced in our own lives, personally and professionally. And that may create some of our own biases. And how do we make sure that we are caring for each other as leaders and creating a safe space where we can engage in thinking about what those bias points are and unpacking them safely and thoughtfully, and also recognizing, the power and privilege that we are granted when we walk into these positions of educational leadership. It's not a small undertaking, and it's certainly not one to be taken for granted at any time.
When I referenced earlier about how we show up for our mind, body, spirit, heart as well, I've come to, in the last, I would say, year or two, incorporate the planet, the global planet. How are my actions going to impact not just others, but the planet? And when I think of planet, yes, the lands, the waters, the air as well. Um, you know, um, Encouraging and thinking about connecting to the land and the waters and the sky, not in the moment, like being as present as you can be in your work, thinking about your actions and work and how it impacts nature.
I think about determination and tenacity, um, and how really, determination and tenacity certainly need to be centered in that ethos of respect and care and compassion and intelligent decision making. Um, Respect is a word that I know we talk about a lot in the world we're in, and it definitely, in my mind, is truly becoming it's an action word, and it has tremendous. It can have tremendous impact if we are able to create the conditions where we are communicating respectfully, and again creating that safe space to agree to perhaps disagree, but that commitment to come back and to think about the children and the youth at the center of every adult-oriented conversation, to ensure that we are doing the work that we've been gifted with doing in educational leadership.
I think part of it is that when we think about inclusion and justice, it's having that courage to speak up, challenging norms and decisions that have been made potentially for years. And I think that sometimes when we're making those decisions, one feels really unpopular. And I think as we're able to lean into that work and have the courage and the evidence and the data to stand behind those decisions, ultimately for the betterment of children, we feel empowered to do that work. And I think part of that is helping others know that they can have the courage too, and that as leaders, we're going to stand with them, beside them, behind them, whatever they need to be able to have that courage.
Really, I think you have to connect, get people to connect, feel a sense of belonging, to help make, people to take those steps forward, and the humility too, to, as a leader, to recognize, if you're putting yourself out there and it doesn't go how you thought, how can you, have that humility to be okay with it, and share your learning with others too.
The biggest thing that we can do right now in this world is listen to our students, hear what their voices are, include them in that conversation, families as well. We know they have a lot of input. They're people, they understand what we're doing. And so why not move with them instead of just fighting that stream all the time?
I also think I heard this term recently, actually working with Dr. Dustin Louie, and he used the term relentless incrementalism. And I think to have courage within this particular place in educational leadership, it is about being relentless and determined and it's about incrementalism. So it's about those small steps that we keep on taking. And I think when I heard him say that, I thought that feels like that sums up my entire professional existence, and wanting to have the resilience to continue that work. I also think that when we have relentless incrementalism and we're making bold action and we're speaking up potentially against inequity, we also have to make sure that we're listening at the same time, because sometimes I think we can get caught up in leading with that courage, and that sometimes we forget to listen to the most important voices, and also to listen with knowledge that we also may not know best in all situations. So what does that look like for us as leaders when sometimes we honestly don't have all the answers?